camera shop or even just the local drugstore, stick your memory card in and print out whatever it was. You can't play with it very much like that unless you have Photoshop, but that's pretty ubiquitous now. You've got two different kinds of ways of making color. And the additive light spectrum, which is colored light, which is what we use on the computer screen, on the projector, or what would be used on stage to get lights. They use colored filters for the spotlights and stuff on stage. And so you add the different colors of light together, and you get your, when they're all together, it's all white. So that's why it's additive. When you add it all together, it turns out to be white. CMYK, which is pigments or printing, inks, the subtractive light system, it's cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. Black gives you a certain amount of depth that you wouldn't get with just the others. But you mix them all together, and the light, you mix all those colors together, and you end up with black, or kind of a dark gray. So most of the light that in art appreciation that I'd be talking about would be the subtractive light spectrum, because most artists don't have access to light, but they have access to pigments. Your basic color wheel, these are all color wheels, but your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. The primary colors there. Your secondary colors are the ones that are opposite them. So what's opposite red is green, what's opposite yellow is violet, what's opposite blue is orange. So those are your secondary colors. And tertiary colors are the colors that are in between all of those. Your red violet, your blue violet, blue green, yellow green, etc. And because they're arranged in that wheel, instead of just being all in a line, which you can create color schemes that work certain ways that make the viewer understand emotionally. And I usually talk probably for about 15 minutes about some of the color associations, the symbolic associations, emotional associations that go along with certain colors. But every culture has its own association, and there are positive and negative things for every color. So even after there's all these lists that say, well, this color could mean this, it also can mean something maybe at the other end of the spectrum, so to say, in a different culture, in a different situation. So just be aware that there's a lot of emotional content that color can provide, but it comes in the context of whatever the artwork is about. There's no flat out saying that blue always means somebody's sad. That red is always a happy color. Sometimes it's an angry color. It's a highly emotional color. When you think about yellow, one of the sayings that we have here is that if you call somebody yellow, you're saying they're a coward or they're sick, But by the same time, in the Middle East, yellow is considered to be a good luck color and very good for prosperity. I guess because it looks like gold. So just be aware that there is a strong emotional content with colors. I can't go over all that. It takes too long. The pure color on this color wheel, the pure color is right on the outside. Tint is when you add that pure color and you add white to it. So you get a pastel sort of shade. Tone is when you add gray to that pure color. And then shade is when you add black to that pure color. And each one of those affects emotionally how the viewer reacts to things when they're used like that. And you know, I'm not going to. That's a little bit fussy for anything, but a lot of people get very involved in trying to figure out all the psychology of colors and stuff. But basically, what you need to know is you've got warm colors, you've got cool colors, and what those warm colors or cool colors tend to make everybody who looks at your artwork feel like. Cool colors tend to keep emotions a little bit more stable, more peaceful, more calm. Warm colors are very energized and think about passion, high emotions. Here's a complementary color scheme where blue and orange are opposite each other on the color wheel. And so here's all these goldfish in this blue room. And so it's when you have a complementary color scheme like that, you've got a certain tension that's created because the colors are opposite each other. So they're kind of fighting each other a little bit. And in this case, the artist has taken it and called it the Revenge of the Goldfish. And you think about those nice little pretty goldfish in the bowls that that you look at. You don't think about them very much, but it's become something out of a nightmare. A triadic color scheme, which in this case is yellow, red, and blue, by Pete Mondrian. It's called Broadway Boogie Woogie. So those are all the primary colors, and white, which is and he's just playing with how much he can convey emotionally with those primary colors, and it's all it's lively. It's moving around. It's when you think about the words Broadway Boogie Woogie, it's about energy. It's about dancing. It's about a lot of life happening. An analogous color scheme. Analogous is when you have colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, and in this case the colors range all the way from the sort of the indigo to just a little bit of the red, but then there's the oranges and the greens, and so it all sort of fits together in one area. It's bright colors, but there's not very much because they all kind of fit together and go together. They're not fighting each other quite so much, even though there is the orange and the violet across from each other, orange and the blue. They're tempered by having those other colors in between them. Okay, I really was thinking, how am I going to, in terms of photographs, talk about color photographs? And so I've got about maybe eight photographs here that are photographs that I took at different times, and I selected them because these photographs, for the most part, wouldn't work very well in black and white. The color is a really important part of what is what's the subject matter. When I was an undergraduate, my photography instructor he said he said that he was a real stickler for detail, and he said no color photography in here at all. The color photographs are simply too pretty, and we don't want pretty. We want good art. We want things that are well composed, well thought out. We don't want pretty. And the lesson that I took from that was, I mean, obviously that he was being, he had a good reason for saying that. Sometimes, though, color becomes really important because you can't say what you want to say if you don't have that color in there. And in this case, this was in the town where I've been there a number of times. I teach sculpture to American students, but we live in town here. Our apartment was actually kind of down this way, and the sculpture studio is up the hill that way from here. This is one of the main town squares, and we got there one time. We're usually there in the fall, and we got there in mid-August, and this sculpture had been installed in the middle of the main square. It's not usually there, but it was a temporary thing. It was only up there for most of the summer, but we weren't there in the summer. It was up for about 3 weeks after we got there, and they took it away. And it's here's this Renaissance town that's based on, I mean, it's based on, there's foundations that go back to Etruscan times, about 6,000 BC, give or take, and and here's this big sculpture of a watermelon sitting out a slice of watermelon sitting out in the town square, and the old guys on the benches are sitting there and talking and just kind of ignoring the fact that this monstrosity is right behind them. And it wouldn't work if I didn't have that color to show that sort of pink on there. This was a little town that we visited one time. It was an Etruscan town. It was a hill town. Had a little church and a little tiny museum that we went into, and walked around the corner. The main square is up kind of where the light's coming from. It was up that way, and we just walked down one little vicolo, little side street, and came around and turned around, and here are turned around to look at where we had just walked from, because we'd walked through there, turned around and looked at it and said, well, that's really a neat shot, coming out of the dark with all that glowing sort of orangey yellow stucco on the walls. And so shot a picture of it and really liked the way it came out. And a lot of times, if you have shot photographs in color and then you try to make them black and white, you really need to play either in Photoshop, or if you were shooting in a regular darkroom, shooting regular color negative film, and then you were going to print it on black and white paper in the darkroom, you'd probably have to boost the contrast and play with it to get it to look right, because the information that's in the color, it just doesn't come through the same as I'm sure probably a lot of you have figured out already. In this case, this was a portrait sculpture at life-size marble head in the Uffizi, and it was one of the Medicis back in the 14th, 15th century. I can't remember which one, but what I really liked was, the light was coming in, and there was this reflection off the wall, which was kind of a yellow wall over here, and his face has got all that sort of warmth to it, because it's just white marble, kind of dirty white marble, but white marble. But then down here on his shirt or whatever, it's all blue. You don't get that reflection of the, and I just like that really subtle little, because it's all just a piece of pure white marble, except in the reflections of the light, you're starting to get those those other colors. This was back in 2003 when my digital camera was very limited because it was I think it was a 4 megapixel camera, and this is about as big as I could get the picture. But most of the gondolas in Venice, by law, are supposed to be black. That's part of the law. But here I saw all these colored gondolas, and I went until I found somebody that could tell me what they were, and they're gondolas used to train the gondoliers. They can't be used for, no, tourists can't ride in them or anything. They're just for training the gondoliers, and they're painted that color so that everybody else in a black gondola knows, watch out for these guys, they don't know what they're doing. And I just thought it was really interesting to see these Easter colored gondolas. Well, that color doesn't show up very well in here. This was, like I said, I'm a stone sculptor, and I really like stone. This is the side of a coffer. It's actually slightly larger than life size as on the screen here. It was carved out of marble, and on top of it, you can see the shadow of the piece that's on top of it. On top of it is sitting a sculpture of a man, an Etruscan man, having a banquet, which is how they were almost always buried as being pictured while they were having a banquet. And the Etruscans they must have been really fun people, because it's all their art has jokes in it, and they're laughing, and they have nice faces, and they seem to really enjoy life. And anyhow, so he's up there having a banquet on top of it. But this is the stone coffer, and a lot of the stone coffers have scenes from people's lives and stuff. But this one, it had been hewn out, and there was this kind of rectangular stripe that was slightly carved into the surface, and it was painted orange. And a lot of the coffers were painted, and the paint still was. You could still see a lot of the paint on them. They weren't left just pure white, like we think ancient Greek and Roman stuff was all white. It wasn't. Well, some of the Roman stuff was, but not the Greek. But the marks of the stone and everything, I just thought it was like a painting to hang on the wall. It was just beautiful. Walking down a back alley in Siena, and there's this big brick wall, but there's this crack in the brick wall, and so and these are just normal sized bricks. And so I focused in because here's this little miniature garden with the moss and this little tiny little seedling with some leaves coming out of it, and the color of the intense green against the red of the bricks. If you picture that black and white, you're going to lose that intensity of color. In Pienza, it was a beautiful. It was kind of a chilly day. It was might have been late October or early November, and but the grass was beautiful and green, and this old medieval church was there, and the skies out, just blue out there, and I just shot that. And again, this one might work a little bit better in black and white, but it was important. I thought that the blue of the sky, the green of the grass, and then the sort of earth tones of everything that's in between. This was also in Pienza. This was actually I took several shots of this building. This was the guy's house that took care of that church that I took care of a minute ago. I shot a minute ago. He was the caretaker. That church doesn't get used anymore. It's just the tourists come down to see it because you couldn't see it from there, but a lot of it's in ruins. But this is the caretaker's house, which is just right around the corner, and this is one of the doors on the side of the caretaker's house building, which he obviously does not use very often. And there was a huge satellite dish on top of this little old. It only had about 2 or 3 rooms in it, but there was a huge satellite dish on top of it. This was the surface of a piece of bronze sculpture. Actually, no, let me take it back. It was a piece of cast iron sculpture by the Polish sculptor Igor Mitaraj, and he does these over life-size, like 8-foot tall faces and things. And this is just a detail of that's actually part of the corner of the eye, and the eye was about this big on the sculpture on the face. But I really like that texture that he'd gotten in there. This is, in Italian, this is a Cinci Allegra, which in English is called the great tit. But I didn't know that when I found it. I walked in to the studio one morning, and this was lying on the step there when I was the first one into the studio to get, I was opening the windows up, opening the doors up, so the students were probably 10-15 minutes behind me. And I came in, here's this gorgeous little bird that it's about the size of a sparrow, and beautiful. And it at some point, maybe in the late evening or maybe in the early morning, probably late evening though, it had flown into one of the windows. Our studio was in a 12th century monastery building. We were in the basement, and there was the old folks' home was upstairs from us, and there were windows in the building with glass in them, and there was one right above the entrance to the studio, and the bird had obviously flown into the window at high speed and broke its neck and fallen on the step, and so I photographed it, and then I had to figure out what kind of bird it was, and here's an old black and white photograph that I took of myself while I was working on the studio on a piece of sculpture that when I started it, this was a little bit longer, about that much longer, and that weighed 1 ton when I started carving it. At this point, it's probably about 1,200 pounds. And that's all I've got for you, unless you have any questions. And I'm sure you have some questions.
When I see the Bernini's, the essence of the Saint Teresa, usually I see sculpture. It's like you see structure, you see form, and you see shapes and lines. But I'm so glad you actually point out that light's involved in there and how it's staged in the whole set. So that's from you, a sculptor's view. So that's really amazing. Yeah.
Well, in Bernini in particular, as far as being a sculptor, but also, I mean, the whole Baroque, it's about drama. It's all about the action and what's happening. And almost everything, whether they're paintings or sculpture in the Baroque, or Bernini is sometimes called a Mannerist, which was sort of at the very beginning of the Baroque. And but it's all about drama. Whereas in Michelangelo, it's not about drama. It's about a measure of who we are. And I didn't show any Michelangelos in here, although I like Michelangelo's stuff, but it just didn't seem to fit in with everything else.
Questions? more question? Okay.
Okay.
One more question.
The last picture I saw you sculpt the 1,200 pounds stone. How long did you process that huge stone? The last picture, the photo you showed us.
And how long?
Yeah, the video to finish.
That was, I don't do very many commissions. Most of the time when I make sculpture, I make it and then I put it in a show and hope somebody's going to buy it. In this particular case, somebody had seen a piece of my sculpture and they had sent me and said, we'd like you to be one of several artists that are applying for a commission for a, and they had a budget already. It was already, the budget was set. It was for a new Delco Remy plant. Delco Remy is the company that works with GM and does electrical systems, batteries, and stuff like that for GM. But they were experimenting for a whole new thing. They were building a factory that was based more on the model at the time of how Japanese factories were being done. In other words, the workers could decide, I want to work in that part of the factory, or I want to work over there, and they could do it. You know, I mean, they had to make sure that they applied to go over there and didn't just walk over there and do it. But all the people, the managers that ran the factory, they ate in the same cafeteria as all the workers, and they basically called them, everybody first name basis. It was an experiment to try and get it more like a family. And because it was an experiment, I mean, GM has its own architects, it has its own designers, that is in charge of getting the artwork and everything. They decided they didn't want to do that for this one because it was so different. So they got an outside firm of architects to come in and do a lot of designing for the place, and the architects in the outside firm came in and asked a bunch of different other sculptors whose work they'd seen, we'd like you to, submit a proposal. And it was for 2 sculptures, which they already had a budget set for. And I thought, well, okay, I'll give it a shot. I sent them pictures of some of my more recent work, but they said, no, we don't like the stuff you're doing now. But the thing that they'd seen of mine was about 10 years old at that point. They said, but we think we'd like something like that, that piece that we saw that was about 10 years old. So could you do a couple sketches? And so I did a couple sketches, which I usually don't do. I just make things, and then, but in this case, I had to do the sketches because I had to send them off. So I sent the sketches off, and I found out later they had taken my pencil sketches and they'd stuck them up on the wall with all the other artists' sketches that everybody else had done, and everybody in the factory voted for the ones they wanted to see. And mine got the most votes. And so it was not one person making the decision. It was the whole factory decided, these are the pieces we'd like to have. So when I finally got the okay that they wanted to do my pieces, I pretty much had to do what I'd already designed. And I started in late May of that year, and I finished and delivered the pieces, two pieces, and they each started out at about a ton, and they were a pair, and I delivered them over Labor Day weekend. I rented a truck and drove up to Indiana, which is where the factory was. So 2 one-ton sculptures got done from basically between Memorial Day and Labor Day. I didn't work on much of anything else those couple of months. And I don't like the sculptures that came out, but they got me a new roof for the house, and I found out later that the amount that I charged, which was, because I got the marble for free, because there was a place 2.5 miles from my studio, which had been an old cutting yard for the Georgia Marble Company that had closed during the Depression, and it had been inaccessible for years, but a new company had bought the land and was bulldozing it and burying all this marble, but they made it accessible. And I asked them, can I have some of this marble? And they said, sure, just don't dig any holes. So I hired a friend of mine who had a wrecker, you know, for hauling cars and stuff. And I hired him, and he charged me what he charged for hauling a car that same distance. So for $60, we pulled up these 1-ton blocks of marble, hauled it to my house, dumped it off, so I paid $60 for the marble. And like I said, the price was already set, and it was $6,000. And after I finished the pieces, I had somebody saw the pieces and said, well, they wanted something kind of like that for their beach house up in North Carolina or something. And I said, the kind of marble you want, I can't get for free anymore. You know, I said, I'll have to get back to you with the price. At that point, I checked with the Georgia Marble Company, and they would have charged me $6,000 for the raw marble if I'd had to go buy the marble. So I couldn't have afforded to do it because I spent $60 on the marble. So, but because of the way it worked, the best thing I got out of those, I got a new roof for the house, which I needed because it was dripping, and that photograph. That was the best thing that came out of that for that $6,000, because I didn't terribly care for the pieces because they were just work. They were old stuff, old ideas, and so they weren't fun. That's not why I make sculpture.
Okay, we run out of time. Last question. Thank you so much. I really enjoy your lecture today. You were talking about the light, the color, the shape, and we all know that we can learn a lot from the nature. From your artistic experience, can you share with us what have you learned from the nature?
From nature?
Yes.
Well, nature's the mother. I mean, she's everything. You know, there are in my own work, no matter what shapes I use, whatever textures and forms that I make in my sculpture, it's all about looking at that material that exists and what does it tell me? What does it give me? And I just come around and it's the, as an artist, it's like I just want to share with you all these little pieces of nature that I find, and sometimes the way to do it is it's like Bernini setting up a stage. Each sculpture is like, okay, if I put it here, here, and here, I'll get the strongest effect from it, and it's about that material, and